Winter Roses, Summer, by fairytalelovr. Chapter 17, A Wasted Tool. Ned walked into the dining room to find Jory and his wife awkwardly sitting at the table as Sansa and Arya glared at each other. He bit back a sigh. Would they ever forgive each other? Sansa, Arya, I would like to introduce you to Ella. She is to be your new governess. Ella, these are my daughters, Lady Sansa and Lady Arya. Sansa stood up with a sweet smile, the picture of the perfect lady. It is very nice to make your acquaintance, Ella, she said. You as well, my dear. She said, you are a very courteous young lady. And, oh my! She turned to Arya. You look the image of a Stark of Winterfell. Arya stopped glaring, shock clear on her face. I have a horsey face, she said defiantly, as if challenging Ella to stop sucking up. The woman laughed. Is that so? Well, whoever said that either didn't know many horses or loved them very much. Arya felt avenged when Jane blushed. But if you have such a connection, I bet you are a very good rider. It's not a lady's place to ride, Arya said, again daring to be defied. Oh, too bad then, Ella said with a smirk. I suppose that after our sewing lesson tomorrow, I shall have to go riding by myself. Arya's chin fell open in shock. I can go riding? You don't have to, of course. We can always stay inside sewing, Ella said, shrugging. Arya smiled, and they all started to return to their seats as the plates were brought in. One moment, Ned whispered, awed. It only took you one moment. She smiled. You have to let them be themselves, Ned. They're not puppets to move how you wish them. What was her answer when your father forbade her to ride astride? She asked in a near whisper, a raised eyebrow and a knowing look. She stole one of my breeches and went riding anyway, Ned thought, not needing to think too hard about whom she meant. And she was the best of us. Good enough to get winter when father finally gave up trying to hold her back. Good enough to unseat those knights at Harrenhal. Ned suppressed a chuckle as she sat down. Perhaps this nonsense between his daughters would finally be over. It proved it wouldn't be as simple as that when another scuffle broke out between the two girls. May I be excused? Sansa asked, standing up. But you've barely eaten a thing, Jory said. It's all right, Ned said, sighing. War is easier than daughters, he mumbled. Ella chuckled as Arya also vanished from the main room. You seem to be doing a superb job in dealing with them. Ned threw her an unamused glare. She smiled. They're upset, Lord Stark, and rightly so. How do I fix it? He asked, exhaling. Let them vent. Listen to their side of the story. Let them tell you why they are upset, and show them why the others done what she did. Ned sighed, sadness filling his whole being. She would have been a wonderful mother if he hadn't married Catelyn. Before that, if he had been half as mad as Lyanna, telling Brandon to fuck off and going south anyway. He shook his head, banishing the thoughts. She probably noticed their direction because her smile had faded as well, her purple eyes glassing over. Would you talk to them? Ned asked. She sighed. From what I've seen, and I haven't seen much, Arya won't hear a word out of my mouth. Sansa has been moulded into an empty-headed, prudish, naive maiden. I'll talk to her. Better put some things in her head fast, he grumbled. Sending the scepter away was a good start, Ella said, reaching for a buttered slice of bread. I don't know about the northern gods, Lord Stark, but religion should not be everything that is taught to a girl. I agree, my lord, Bertha Cassel said, and the two women exchanged a companionable smile. I know, Ned sighed, but they are completely different from each other. I don't know what to do. Arya won't be tamed like a wild horse, Lord Stark, Ella said. Trying to make her into a proper southern lady will end up following a precedent we would much rather avoid. She stood up, going in the direction Sansa had disappeared to earlier. Ned shivered as her words sunk in. "Promise me, Ned!" The words echoed again. He couldn't allow anything remotely similar to happen to his daughters. His father's ambitions, his complete disregard for Lyanna's loud and continued refusal to marry Robert, had turned out like it did. He had long ago promised himself he would never force any of his children to be something they weren't. He took a deep breath before standing up as well. It was time he spoke to his youngest daughter. Ella was right. Arya was the picture of a Stark of Winterfell. She had the same wolf blood that had made Lyanna and Brandon into wild and free spirits. She would never fit the mould of a dainty southern lady. "Sansa," Ella called, knocking on the door. "My dear, may I come in?" There was a mumbled response from within, and Ella decided to try her luck and come in anyway. The girl was curled up in her bed, hugging a pillow to her chest. "I don't want to see anyone!" Sansa attempted in an angry tone. The woman saw through it all too easily. "I rather think you do. Come, I know we just met, but I'm here to help. You don't look angry with your sister. What is it?" "I am angry with her. She's the reason Lady is dead. She was the sweetest of them, the best behaved, and Arya had to go and behave like a beast, and now Lady is dead." Ella blinked in confusion. "You're going to have to tell me the story from the beginning, my dear." Sighing, Sansa sat up, still hugging the pillow, looking every bit as young as her 2 and 10 years, and told the tale of an arrogant prince, a defiant little sister, a protective direwolf, and, at the end, a cold queen who called for the head of an innocent to satisfy her whims. "I will say it again, Sansa. You're not angry with Arya. Not really. Deep down, you know she was right. And you yourself just told me Arya spoke up in defense of Lady. So, tell me, what is it?" "Princes are supposed to be gentle and kind," tears beginning to fall from her eyes. "And now you see that life isn't a song. Is that it?" The girl shrugged. "The prince, he said we're to be married one day, that my lord father is only waiting for the right moment to announce it. And when we are married, then I will be his princess, and I will do what he bids, and I will bear him heirs." "If that is to be the case, you would be the mother of the future king."
Joffrey is weak and a coward, and I don't want to marry him,"
Sansa confessed, breaking down in tears. Ella sat on the bed, drawing the sobbing girl into her arms.
He is cruel. He attacked Dany, and he keeps calling Jon a bastard, even when he was made Lord Starling. And he and the Queen, she told me they wouldn't hurt Arya or the butcher's boy if I said Arya and Nymeria attacked Joffrey, but they lied. They murdered the butcher's boy. They wanted to hurt Nymeria, but Arya was smart to send her away, so they killed Lady. And Lady was innocent, and the Queen wanted her pelt to gloat."
As she succumbed to her sobs, Ella held her, caressing her hair as the little girl cried out all her sorrows. When Sansa finally recovered and sat up, Ella smiled softly at her. "So, are you angry with your sister?"
"I'm angry she wanted to play with the boy, and she ruined everything."
"Did she?" Ella asked, and Sansa lowered her eyes. "Arya was having fun with a friend away from the others. So, I ask you, who ruined everything?" Sansa cleared the last of her tears off her face, and Ella smiled, as the girl looked up with a determined gleam in her eyes. "Joffrey and Cersei, they lied and killed Lady." "And what did Arya do?" "She told the truth," Sansa confessed. She knew she might be punished for playing with a lowborn and for attacking the prince. But she told the truth. And she tried to defend Lady? And she tried to defend Lady. Sansa agreed. I lied. I said what the Queen wanted me to say. You did? And? And Father knew the Queen would get what she wanted. He stepped in so Lady wouldn't suffer. What are you going to do? Anna asked with a soft smile. Apologize, Sansa said, and there was steel in her voice. Apologize to Arya and Father for lying. And Joffrey better stay away from me. Ella smiled. Sansa was a child, but she was growing up, and now she would no longer be easy prey to Cersei's machinations. King's Landing was no place for children, or songs, or dreams. Sansa had learnt it the hard way, but she seemed well on her way of not letting it happen again. Sansa waited until Arya and Jane were out of the room, before turning to Ella. I want to thank you for helping and counselling me last night. Not for this, my dear. That is part of my job, Ella said kindly, and Sansa smiled timidly, biting her lower lip. Sansa, you may ask me anything, the woman insisted. You are still going to ride with Arya, aren't you? She asked, and Ella nodded. Could I maybe come with you? Ella only smiled, standing up and reaching into one of the drawers. Sansa stared at the leather breeches, unsure. You don't have to wear them if you don't want to, but they do make it easier to ride. Father said Aunt Lyanna was a great rider, and King Robert loved her. Dany loves riding astride, and Jon encourages it. Maybe a lady can ride. How about you try it once? Then you can really decide what you want, without thinking too much about what others would do. Sansa smiled shyly and nodded. Later, when Ella and Arya met in the courtyard, there were 3 saddled horses waiting for them, but Arya didn't say anything, until Sansa walked out, her hair carefully braided down her back. She looked very uncomfortable in her breeches and tunic. Arya let her mouth fall open in shock as she stared at her sister, as if she were an exotic creature from Sothorios. First lesson, Arya said after a moment, and Sansa watched her warily. Know your horse. Ella smiled as she watched Arya take Sansa to the horse the stable boy had called the sweetest, and introduced them. Sansa hesitantly touched the animal's neck, wary of the big teeth. After they had mounted and gone around the palace gardens for about 2 hours, they returned to the courtyard, and Sansa smiled again, patting her horse's neck. I think I'll join you tomorrow, if you don't mind. As long as you're not stupid, Arya needled. Sansa only blushed and turned her attention back to the horse. Hoster Tully was no fool. He knew very well that Ned Stark wouldn't have dared send Catelyn back to her father unless she had done something truly unforgivable. He wasn't the sort to break his vows, regardless of a bastard he'd brought home from the war. And if the Honourable Lord of Winterfell was tired of his wife, well, he was on his way to the capital. All he needed to do was leave Catelyn behind as he established his new household in King's Landing. No. Hoster knew there was more to the story than his daughter's simple, I've made him angry. He was not going to be hasty, like his son, and raise the banners while he wasn't sure what this more was. Lord Paramount of the Riverlands he might be, but that was feasible against the strength of the North. The biggest kingdom, which had stood unconquered for millennia, and only bent the knee to a dragon. Not to mention that the North stood unquestionably behind House Stark, while the Riverlands had been irredeemably fractured since the rebellion. Also, he would be the laughingstock of the realm if he waged a war for a crying daughter. And there was also the business of Ned Stark being Hand of the King. Robert Baratheon would obviously stand by his friend, and the consequences to House Tully would be terrible. But he also couldn't do nothing. He needed to get to the truth, which Catelyn didn't seem eager to reveal. But even if she did, what kind of spineless father would he be if he didn't try to salvage his daughter's reputation? For this reason, Hoster had decided a conversation between himself and Ned Stark would be necessary. The Lord Hand was travelling south in the retinue of the king, so it wouldn't be the best idea to request a meeting somewhere in the Riverlands, Maidenpool or Harrenhal, for instance. Not only receiving such an expensive group of guests with little warning might be a hardship his bannermen wouldn't take kindly to, but also such an illustrious presence would certainly be prejudicial to Hoster himself. So the Lord of Riverrun had his maester calculate the date of the expected arrival of Eddard Stark in his new office, and calculate Hoster's own retinue to arrive in the capital a few days later. He was received at the Tower of the Hand the day after his arrival by a very gruff-looking guard. "Where are your manners, Desmond?" asked a woman walking into the room. She had honey-coloured hair, fair skin, and purple eyes. "Go tell the Lord Hand he has a visitor." The guard bowed his head and left the room. "I am sorry, Lord Tully. The road was unkind on our men, and we are still recovering. Might I offer you some refreshment?" As he was wearing the Tully sigil on his chest and had arrived on a litter with Tully banners, he wasn't surprised the woman knew who he was. "And who are you?" he asked when she didn't identify herself. "Oh, I'm sorry, my lord. My name is Ella. I am the little lady's governess." "I see," Hoster said, displeased. Catelyn was sent back to his home with the scepter, and Ned Stark went ahead and hired a nobody woman instead of the Faith. Whatever his daughter had done, she had alienated her husband and children from the gods. "And what do you teach my granddaughters?" "What my lord bids me to teach them," Ella answered simply. Hoster saw that he would get no other answer from her. She hadn't given a family name, but she carried herself with the poise of a great lady. Perhaps a bastard? A former kept woman? He put the thought away, and was soon led to the Lord Solar. "Lord Tully," Ned greeted him, standing up. "This is a surprise. An unwelcome one, I imagine. Considering the terms of my parting with your daughter, I can't say I expect this to be the most pleasant of conversations." "No, you shouldn't. It is about my daughter I wish to speak. The reason why you have decided to return her to my home." "I am sure you have spoken with Catelyn." "I would like to hear your side of the story," Hoster said, unwilling to admit he hadn't been able to coax the truth from his daughter. "With all due respect, Lord Tully, but if Catelyn had told you the truth, you wouldn't have come asking for my side of the story. I would understand you coming wishing to restore Catelyn to her position, but never to hear my side." Hoster felt cold spreading down his spine. What in the gods' names had Catelyn done? "I would like to hear it all the same," he insisted. Ned sighed. "I told Catelyn to tell you. I don't know whether to be glad she finally realised her actions was something to be ashamed of, or would be too worried she believes it would be so inconsequential as to not merit disclosure." "Did she betray you? Break her vows?" By the man's raised eyebrow, Ned knew what he was being goaded into saying, something a man with a bastard son had no moral to say. But he didn't let it get to him, only started the story. When he was done, Hoster had to admit he was right. He wouldn't have come asking for Ned Stark's side of the story if Catelyn had confessed her sins. Knowing Bran wouldn't walk out of his bed, Maester Walken had spent 2.5 moons thinking of how to help, conferring with Maester Luwin while he had been about, and later by correspondence. The result had been a wheeled chair to help with the boy's mobility while in the same floor, and a saddle that was waiting for Bran to recover some strength before being put to the test. The boy had been initially upset and irritable, but Jon and Robb coaxed him out of bed and Dany and Isla pampered him. Catelyn had been of the opinion that Bran should stay in bed until he was fully recovered, but she was quickly overruled. Bran only seemed to get stronger when he went out, and moody when he was locked in, so Mr. Walken had prescribed exercise and outside air, and Jon and Robb had been more than happy to oblige. Robb pushed Bran up to his room after supper that night. The boy had passed out during the dessert course, too exhausted after spending the whole afternoon testing his new saddle. As usual, Catelyn was inside, curled up in the chair next to the bed.
"Mother," Robb said quietly after he put Bran to sleep, "we must finish our conversation from earlier."
"Bran still needs me,"
Catelyn said, and Robb sighed. "Bran is perfectly fine. Well, as fine as he can be. I'm planning our return to Winterfell. You will leave for Riverrun then or earlier. I was hoping we would not have to quarrel."
"Surely your father wouldn't keep me from Bran now? Not when he needs me, when the boy—"
"Jon, Mother! His name is Jon, and he's my brother!" Robb exclaimed, then stepped away to control himself. Yelling would only wake Bran up. "And you're right, he is no longer in Winterfell. But that is not the only reason." He looked down the window. "Fire! One of the towers is on fire! I'll go help!" And without further ado, he ran out of the room, and Catelyn stood up to look at the window. "You're not supposed to be here," a voice from behind her said, making her turn and gasp. "No one's supposed to be here." Catelyn traversed the corridors of the castle in a rush. There were more guards around, 2 escorting her, and Robb even sent Greywind. After what Summer had done the night before, she would never again complain about the direwolves, or how her children and the boy allowed them free run of the castle. She had seen the door many times before, coming and going from Bran's room, but she had never been in the Lord's chambers. There were 4 guards at the door, and the increased security irked her in equal measure to soothing her. Inside, she couldn't help the needle of jealousy when she saw the sitting room. She faltered a step, though, when she saw the white wolf sitting in front of a door, a clear guarded position. His red eyes were deeply judgmental and cold, as if he knew precisely the nature of the relationship between Catelyn and his master. Grey Worm left her side, going to stand by the door, and after one last human-like glare, Ghost stood and turned, waiting for one of the guards to open the door and crossing it first. Catelyn followed into the room cautiously. There was a beautiful and grand desk across the room from the door, where the boy sat, the embodiment of his title. His princess wife sat next to him, and Robb, Sam, and Benjen sat on chairs across the desk. They all stood to greet her, but as they resumed their seats, no chair was offered to Catelyn. Given Daenerys' smirk, the plot had been of her making. "Mother, how are your hands?"
Robb asked. "Healing," she said. "The wounds are worth their price." They all nodded. Catelyn's wounds were what delayed the cat's paw enough for Summer to jump up and tear the man's throat out. Therefore, they're what had saved Bran's, and Catelyn's life. "Why am I here?" she asked, deciding beating around the bush would help no one.
"We recovered the assassin's dagger," Benjen said. "It's Valyrian steel and dragonbone. A fancy weapon for a lord, let alone a cat's paw."
"Surely whoever hired him must have given him the weapon." "Who would arm a low-life killer with his own weapon?" Daenerys asked. "The chances of the man being caught were very high."
"Perhaps the knife was payment for the deed," Catelyn suggested. "Not impossible," Jon said, "but a knife like this is highly recognizable. And expensive. Whoever had this, and whoever was powerful enough to have a secret worth killing a son of a great house for, must have enough gold to pay a man without taking such a risk."
"A secret?" Catelyn asked.
"Bran might not have been used to these towers, Mother," Robb answered, "but he was very good at climbing. He was sure-footed. He'd never faltered before. It might have gone unquestioned before, but no one would have wasted money or time sending an assassin after him unless he had seen something he was not supposed to have seen. When he survived his fall, The assassin would have been needed to silence him.
But he didn't remember anything,
Catelyn exclaimed. That wouldn't matter, Benjen said. There's always the chance he's pretending and doesn't remember, or it will come to him later. I think we all have our suspicions. Jon sighed. I agree with you, Uncle. And after what Joffrey has done, I wouldn't put anything past them. But we can't go around accusing anyone without proof, much less the Queen. Jaime Lannister didn't join us on the hunt, brother, Robb pointed out.
Yes, but he didn't join any of the hunts since Winterfell, Sam said. I hate to say this, but this behaviour is not suspicious. And even if it were, it's too weak an argument.
Father must be told, Robb said with clear frustration.
We can't trust a raven,
Catelyn said, and everyone seemed to agree.
I can go to King's Landing.
It would be too suspicious,
Brandon said.
I don't see how, she argued. I haven't seen my daughters in months.
And when Ned, Benjen started to argue, but Robb cut him off. By now everyone knows you're away, Mother. And even if not, you wouldn't have gone to the capital with Father. You would be away from the girls.
Sam and Jon exchanged a look.
I'll go, the latter said. I have business in the capital. I have to rally more workers for the mines, buy tools, hire smiths and jewellers. And I have to show them the Winter Diamond. Raise interest. No one will find it suspicious if I come.
I thought Sam was going for that,
Daenerys complained. Jon blushed deeply.
You were already going to go too, weren't you?
I didn't want to, he confessed, but I need to raise interest. Show them how unique the gem is. Otherwise it won't get as high a price. And now, it really does need to be me.
Dany pursed her lips, but didn't say anything else. Catelyn clenched her jaw, burning in curiosity to ask. Did she hear right? Mines. Winter Diamond? It was clearly a new gem. If Lord Starling had to raise interest for it. The group dispersed shortly afterward, having decided Jon would depart as soon as the ship, crew and supplies were ready. Sam was to go with him. Catelyn went back to her room, seeing as Bran was riding outside with a retinue of guards, and she didn't want to give them any cause to send her away. The longer she stayed, the longer she was beside her sons, and the longer she avoided her father's displeasure at her hidden departure. Jon walked into the bathing room to find his wife facing out the window, as Doreah moved about filling the pool with water from one of the hot springs that passed beneath the castle. The underground lake was certainly warmed by the volcano to have such hot water, and it made it easier to bathe.
Are you angry?
He asked quietly, stepping up next to her. She sighed, leaning back, and allowing him to hug her from behind. I've been angrier, she admitted. I don't want you to go.
I know. I don't want to leave you either. I wish you could come, but not only, I don't think we should risk the baby. I would also rest easier knowing you're nowhere near within punching distance of Cersei or Joffrey. Especially if I'm to enrage them further by showing our new fortune.
I know, Dany agreed, sighing deeply. Jon put one hand delicately over her swollen belly. She was huge, even more so because she was so petite, but Tyler said everything was going perfectly well. There was a kick, and Dany moved his hand so he could feel it.
The kicking is getting stronger, he said with a smile.
Well, the child is growing in there, and space is running out.
Jon turned her around and kneeled in front of her. Understanding what he was going to do, Dany opened her robe, letting the fabric fall to the floor, exposing her body. Jon chuckled at the visible sign of their child moving, and he kissed the protruding foot.
Hey, little one. Think you can wait another moon for your papa to come back before you decide to meet the world?
The kicking got stronger in response.
I think you'll be more persuasive in song,
Dany said, smiling.
I highly doubt that, Jon grumbled, feeling the kicking. I have a terrible voice.
We disagree,
Dany complained.
The pool is ready, my lady,
Doreah said.
Thank you, you're dismissed,
Dany said, and the handmaiden left quickly. Join me? She asked.
Jon smiled. What do you think I came here for?
End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. I like that chapter. One thing I will say this, Ashara, or Ella as she's going by in this, I think in this version of reality, she should have been the girl's mum. And she's showing the difference between a mother and a mum. Letting Sansa embrace her wintry Stark side, and letting Arya know that she was beautiful. Because honestly, calling a girl horseface, I was called ugly in my life and it did not help my confidence. I only started feeling pretty in my own skin for about 2 years. And let me tell you, I am embracing it right now. I'm wearing a tiara at this very second. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and albino pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.